Let me ask you this, Bob. Are we still the Soprano state after a few years of Chris Christie at the helm? Do you feel like we're making progress of kind of dropping that negative stigma that we've developed nationally, or do we still have a long way to go?
And look how long it took us to get there, 200 years or so. When we were researching some for the movie, The Soprano State, we tried to find out, because they always ask us at book signings, well, when will this start? In the book, it really only starts, around the turn of the 20th century, in the early 1900s, when the big mobsters like Al Capone actually had conventions in Atlantic City, which was always a funny image to me. I could just see him walking around with a big cigar with these other mobsters, and it was one of those convention kind of stickers you put on your clothes that said, hello, I'm Al.
Right.
then Jersey City was known pretty well around the nation, and we sort of went through that, and we didn't really get into the roots of it, but when we were researching, we found over in Pennsylvania some newspapers that went back, somewhere around 1776, and there were stories in there about crooked land deals over in Jersey. And one of the best things that I found, and they put it in the movie, I don't remember if it made it in the book, because about a third of the book was edited out for length, but they did have it in the movie, and it was with George Washington would take his ragtag army of people trying to win our freedom, fighting the good fight under impossible conditions, over to Jersey, where the Jersey people insisted on charging him tolls to use the Jersey roads. and in the movie they handled that so well, because
Right.
they told that story from colonial time. George Washington actually wrote a letter to the then governor of New Jersey complaining about the way his troops were treated. So they had that in the movie, and then they cut to a modern day turnpike toll booth thing to just show you in 200 plus years things haven't changed very much. But I think what was different with Christie was that a lot of the white collar political stuff, these people just skated by. People knew it was going on, but they also felt pretty sure that nothing was going to happen to them because of political connections and that kind of thing. And I think it's really what Christie changed. They couldn't be so sure anymore. And when you really got into it, it was blatant. I mean, these guys would, be wealthy, but they had fled for, $800 or something. They were greedy and stupid. But I think that we're because we have shined the light on it. I was at a book signing on Sunday, and a woman who was seated on the front row raised her hand. She said, "I just want you to know, I didn't know much about politics. I didn't want to get involved in it until I read your book. And then I realized that the only way it's ever going to change is for enough honest people to get involved." And that was the first time I've heard that, but it always makes me feel good that people were inspired to get involved and try to make a difference.
No, I think that's what you did. I think you took information that people need to know, you put it in an entertaining format that disseminated the information and was readable, and I think people picked it up. I mean, I personally always been a believer that most people aren't stupid, most people aren't corrupt or evil or base. It's just ignorance. And people, once they engage the process and they see the facts, then they recognize the problem and they're willing to engage it. So I'm glad you're hearing that at your book signing, because God knows we need more people that want to engage in a positive way.
Well, and I tell you, one of the other things, Matt, that really moves me, that I never really expected, and that is, now that we're in the computer era,
Right.
where they can take a look at demographics and they know who reads my blog, and they know who's reading the column. and they know who listens to me on radio.
Sure.
And also the new authors page on Facebook, which is all about this book, and we've sort of tried to take people along with us on the book tour and show them what it's like behind the scenes when you're doing all this great glamorous stuff that we do.
Right.
But that is a breakdown of demographics as well. And 51% of the people who read that page are under 44. They're somewhere between 21 and 44. And you hear so much about young people don't want to get involved, young people don't care, and that's the future of the country, yada, yada. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of young people out there who really do care and really who want to get involved. And that really is what's going to change things, because this is not a short fight. This is a long-term fight. And it's the young people who are going to have to get involved and make a difference. And I always tell them when I talk to college kids and they ask me about this kind of stuff, I say, make up your mind right now. You're not going to sell out. Because once you sell out, you can never go back. So make up your mind. You're going to get involved and you try to do good, but you're not going to sell out. And, yeah, it makes me feel good when we talk to college kids, and they're so enthusiastic and they want to do the right thing. It's really great.
Now, I know that you've talked to a lot of college kids in New Jersey over the years about the Soprano State, now this book. Now Bob Ingle is more than ever national. And I know that, we've talked about all the media appearances you've done recently. I'm sure many people listening to this video have watched them. People are interested in this governor and what you're writing about this governor. Let me ask you, did you have a goal in mind when you wrote this book? Because again, myself and most of the people listening to this particular interview are people that have followed you for a while. They read The Soprano State. People have been bugging you to write a sequel. I'm not sure if you consider this a sequel per se, but this is Bob Ingle's next big political book, so clearly you must have had Soprano State in mind when you were writing it. So what did you hope to tell the country about Chris Christie and what's going on here?
Oh, you're absolutely right. From the very first week, and the Christie book came out a week ago today, so it's now a week old. But if you go back to 4.5 years ago, when Soprano State came out, at this very same time, people were saying, are you going to write a sequel?
Right.
And it is the next book, and it certainly has to do with politics, and Chris Christie was in Soprano State, of course. It's the next book. It's not so much a sequel as it is the next book, and they came to me after the amazing success of Soprano State, which after 4.5 years is still selling. Somewhere in the world, they bought Soprano State this week.
That's
and,
right.
That feels really good that people still care. But they came to us with a lot of books, and I just didn't want to do any of them. And when they came to us with the Christie book, I thought, well, maybe there's something here that we can do. Because I do a lot of traveling, and I'll be on airplanes, and I'll be sitting next to somebody who, on a long flight, they'll inevitably say to me, where are you from? And I'll say, New Jersey. And they will say one of two things. They'll either say, oh, I love your governor.
Right.
Or they'll say, do you know the governor? And imagine they're surprised when I tell them, not only do I know him, but I'm writing a book about him, because you don't get that on an airplane every day. So I took to asking them, well, what is it you like about him? What is it you know about him? And it would come back, there's YouTube videos. He stands up there and he says what he thinks. And I thought, okay, fine, that's part of who he is. But so many people across this country only know him through that, so they don't really know him, but they love him. And they asked us to do the book, and it all came together. I said, well, I think maybe there is a story to tell here, so that these people will, at the very least, know why it is they love the man, or they'll know something about this man that they love. And that's what we set out to do, man. And we were going to have a book about a relatively young politician who started out in Morris County, and whose career had a few bumps in the he winds up being a very popular runner. But when we got into it, we found out there was much, much more to the story than that. We did some research into his ancestors, and on his mom's side of the family, you go back a couple of generations, these people came on the boat from Italy. And they went into New York, and they got whatever job they could get, or maybe two jobs, and they were willing to do whatever it took. And each generation, they saved their money, and each generation did a little better until two generations or so down the road, you had not only a very popular governor, a Republican governor in a traditionally Democratic state, but you had somebody that people across America were saying, this man ought to be president. Now, I submit to you, this is the quintessential all-American story, that there is no place on the globe except the United States of America where you could have this kind of story. And as I got into it, of course, I covered a lot of the political stuff that's
Sure.
in there, and we tried to make that as interesting and as funny and as we could, like Soprano State. But, it's just
Right.
something about that family. When you read about them and the grandmother and her mother and how that a marriage was arranged and the rocky stuff they went through in their life, and you find out that all the members of his family, if you look at them, there's probably somebody you identify with. Somebody told me the other day after reading the book, well, I finally figured out who I am in my family. And I said, really? And he says, yeah, I'm the governor's younger brother, Todd.
Oh, wow.
Because when I went through school, I had the same teachers he did, and they kept saying, oh, yeah, we taught your brother, you're not him. So I recognize people from my family, and I think other people did too. I keep hearing that from people. So with this, you get the full story, and it was a lot more than just politics. It's really a very human interest story, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I gotta say, again, as someone who follows this stuff pretty closely, that's the chapter that interested me the most, finding out some of the backstory about the governor and where he came from. I mean, we all know what we read on campaign literature, but yeah, I think it's definitely going to endear people because his message is one thing, but I think you hit on it in this book, your and Michael's book, that better than anyone. I think people are identifying with him as a person.
And family members as well.
Right.
And that's, that's what that's really what surprised me. I didn't know that was there. And then you start to realize what made the governor the way he is. There's a part in there where I think it was his brother, was talking about the dinner table and how everybody would come in and they would eat later because the father, Bill, worked at the ice cream plant and he had to come in via train and it took a while and so it was a later dinner. And you were expected to talk about not only what was going on in your life at school or wherever, you were expected to discuss current events. And then they would get into a discussion about the pros and the cons, and you were expected to defend your stand. So in the governor's family, it was okay to argue and disagree. There was no problem with that. But you had to take a stand. And now, when you see the governor, you see where that's coming from, because he didn't see a problem with having disagreements with people. He would have a problem that if people couldn't stand up and defend their stand.
No, absolutely. You're so right. And, to this day, whenever I go to a Republican event, even if it's something like the college Republicans, I spoke to the statewide college Republicans, I think last month when they had their convention, and Todd wasn't there. His father was there, Wilbur Christie. Sure enough, there, and he wasn't. The guy has no airs. He's one of the most down to earth people you'll ever meet, which I know you know because you spent a lot of time with these guys to write this book. And what I saw him doing was thanking people for helping his son, and it's just such a strange, refreshing thing.
We were doing a radio interview yesterday with WOR in New York, and it happened to be a female host, and so she took a whole different view of this Christie story than we get from some other people. And I thought that was a very good thing. I really enjoyed that she took sort of a mom's view of the whole thing. But one of the things that interested her, she said, I didn't know he had a sister. And we've heard that before. Dawn, the sister, chooses not to be in the spotlight.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean she's not involved, because there's still that tight-knit family. She would go answer phones when he was campaigning or something like that, work in the back, work envelopes, do something. But she really didn't want to be out front, and because she just liked her privacy, and that's just her personality. But people are surprised that he has a sister.
Do you get the impression, because I mean, first of all, I think one of the funniest things about the whole Christie ascendance is how popular he is with women. I know you mentioned his sister, and I know back during 2009, one of John Corzine's primary attack lines was Christie wants to take mammograms away from women, this, that, and the other, and then of course he counterpunched with well, my mother, was a breast cancer. Well, right, exactly. So, that it kind of fell flat on his face. But I know all my Democrat friends who are detractors are just completely perplexed by this. I mean, do you have any insight going around the country? Why do you think women in particular are identifying with him so closely?
I don't know. He has such a engaging personality. I was in Chicago on Friday, and we were there to sign books at CPAC and also for some media interviews. And it just so happens that Christie was the keynote speaker. And since we were there anyway, Mike Simons covered it for the Gannett papers, and we said, what the heck? We're here, the governor's here, let's do it.
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Mike was up wherever it was the governor was. I stayed down in the press room, and these, of course, are all out of state press people, and mostly political writers and political editors and that sort of thing, because this was a major convention of conservative people. And the governor gets up there, and he's Christie. He does his bit, and those of us who cover him or watch him a lot are familiar with it. Some of the people downstairs where I was in the newsroom weren't necessarily covering him all the time like we do, and he would hit one of his lines, and they were just rolling on the floor. These are news guys. I don't know how many news conferences you go to, but you don't get a lot of laughing.
Sure.
We're not the type that does a lot of laughing.
Right.
But they were loving every minute of it. And there's just something about this man. You just see him, and he comes out, and what I really think it is we live in a time where so many politicians are blow-dried, and they're reading off a teleprompter, or they're reading off a speech, and they're so careful to be politically correct. They parse every word, so that when they get through with it and you get the transcript, you realize, well, that man spoke for 15 minutes and said absolutely nothing. Then you get Christie, who walks out, often without a word, printed word, or even notes, and just talks about the subject. And you really see it when he gets through with whatever the press conference was about. Then they open it up to questions. The man has absolutely no way of knowing what Mike Simons or any other reporter is going to ask. There is absolutely no way to be prepped for this. He can't write on the back of his hand. He can't do the stuff we did in school.
Right.
And he aces it. He handles it. He just takes one after another, so the media likes him, even the media that he sometimes attacks likes him. But I think, the people that I meet on airplanes and the people that are out there across America and all the states, they just like that approach. That's just something that they're not used to seeing, and it's just something that they like.
Yeah. In New Jersey, we don't like fake politicians. We'll tolerate fake tans, not fake politicians.
Well, I think we probably tolerated a few fake politicians today.
Well, right. Well, at least maybe we're turning a corner, right? We'll see.
I hope so, anyway.
I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know that you have another interview tonight and you're in high demand. I read the book, Christie, The Inside Story of His Rise to Power. I read it in one sitting. I don't know if that's embarrassing or if that's it's one of those books. It really is. As someone who has covered the governor since he was a U.S. attorney, is there anything that you uncovered along with Mike Simons when you were writing this book that surprised you?
Yes, I did. And first of all, let me tell you what you just said about reading it in one sitting. I hear that all the time. We also heard that about Soprano State. So I was glad to hear it.
Bob, I got to tell you, to this day,
We were trying to have that same easy to read and entertaining
right.
style that you got with Soprano State. And I'm just delighted. I'm delighted to hear that. And I'll tell you that one of well, as you know, since you've read the book, but we really wanted to talk to some member of the governor's mother's generation. It turns out that there's only one person left, and that's Uncle Joe, who lives out in the San Francisco area. And I got his number, and I called him up, and I explained what I was doing, and I said, I wonder if you would talk to me about a book I'm writing about your nephew. And he said, sure, be glad to. And I said, okay, fine. We can handle this on the phone, or we could exchange messages, however you want to do it. He says, no, I only talk in person. So I went into Mike Simons, and I said, well, Mike, we're going to San Francisco. And we went we got there Saturday afternoon. We came back to New Jersey Monday morning. It was, it was really a jet lag kind of a trip. But I heard from him. After the book came out, he had pre-ordered it, and he got it, and he sent me a note. And he's a wonderful, wonderful man. I can only imagine what his sister, the governor's mother, must have been like, because I never had the pleasure of talking to her.
Right.
But he sent me a note after he got his book, and he said, Bob read it in one sitting. Wonderful book. So, it made me feel good when I can hear that from you and him and other people, that people just don't want to put it down. They just want to finish it. But to answer your question, did I learn anything I didn't know? Yeah. How long the governor had really wanted to be in public service. There's a story in there about how the teachers spotted him out by the flagpole in the second grade. And the teacher walked out to him to find out what was going on. And the little Christie, he must have been about 7 at the time, looked up at his teacher and he said, someday I'm going to be president. And now think about it, Matt. When you were 7 years old, you wanted to be an astronaut, or you wanted to be a policeman, you wanted to be something like that. I wanted to be a cowboy, but I'm not sure kids want that anymore. But
I think they do. I mean, my biggest aspiration was to build a fort that wouldn't collapse after 5 minutes of being in it. And that's why I stayed away from. That's why I stayed away from engineering. I always use the governor's joke. I'm a lawyer because I can't count.
Right, and his brother Todd was telling me, I was asking him about that story. Of course, Todd is younger, so he wouldn't be able to, remember that. But I was asking him about that, and he said, well, Bob, what I can tell you is, when he was about 10, that they were talking about what they wanted for Christmas. And what Christie wanted, what Christie wanted, was a law book. A law book at 10. And I can tell you at 10, I'm not sure what I wanted, probably a bike, I don't remember, but certainly wasn't a law book. For a long time,
Oh, my.
he has had his eye on the goal. And as you know, it takes determination and talent and brains and some luck, but, that's what it takes to get where you want to go. And I think that explains a lot about how he has got to be where he is. He's not even 50 yet, relatively young man. He can afford to sit out this election and do nothing and then come back in 4 years, or even 4 years after that.
Absolutely. And I mean, people always think it's so strange when someone like him is thinking about high elected office that early. But yet, we watch these shows like Dance Moms, and it's not strange for a kid to want to be a swimmer that early. So, or a dance or whatever the case might be. We run kids ragged from the time they're infants anymore with activities. So.
But, he wasn't. It was another interesting dynamic in the family. Mother, very influential, as you know. Grandmother, very influential, as you know, because you've read the book. Both staunch Democrats. It was Bill, his father, who was a Republican. it was a house divided politically. And then one day, a guy named Kane, Tom Kane, came to his middle school and was talking about civic duty and being involved. And I guess Christie was about 14, so I don't know if he got that law book at 10 or not, but maybe he did. He had read it by the time he was 14. And he was so moved by this, he decided he wanted to help Tom Kane. So he talked his mother, said fine, although she's a Democrat, remember, she would drive him over to Tom Kane, the Republican's house, but he would have to handle it himself. She wasn't going to help. So Tom Kane tells this story about how Mrs. Christie drives young Chris over to the house, remains in the car in the driveway. He has to reluctantly go up and knock on the door. Tom Kane himself opens the door, and young Chris Christie looks up and says, I want to be involved in politics, and my mother says that I should ask you what I should do. Tom Kane says, well, I'm thinking about running for governor. Would you like to come along? And so Tom Kane took him up to wherever it was, and his first job was to put flyers on every seat at this meeting that they went to. And so, from then on, he was off and running, and he worked for him through school. Tom Kane lost that first election, and he recalls that it was just devastating to Christie that his mentor lost, but not so much Tom Kane. He said there'll be another time, and of course there was, and he went on to become one of the more popular governors the state has ever had. Sure. And Christie said he learned something about losing from Tom Kane, although I think it was probably easier for Tom Kane than it's ever been for Chris Christie, because they are different personalities.
No, he definitely doesn't like to lose, and sometime when things calm down a little further down the road, we'd love to have you back to talk a little bit more about some of the political dynamics that are going on right now in the state.
We'll be glad to. We're going to be involved in this for a while, and then of course we got those big conventions cranking up down in Tampa the last week of August for the Republicans, and then the next week in Charlotte, first week of September for the Democrats. So it's going to be a very uncomfortable convention, I'm afraid, with the humidity in both of those places. But we'll be glad to talk to you and do anything we can to help you out.
I'm not sure how many books you move at the Democrat convention. You're gonna move.
I don't know if we're actually signing at either one. Some of the networks and people have asked us to come by and talk to them at the convention to sort of explain, because we know who the players are. Sure. And no matter what happens with the tickets, I think that Christie is going to play a big role at the convention, the keynote speaker or something. I think they're going to have a big role for him because he is so popular.
Oh, no doubt about it. He's definitely going to pack people in and help the ratings. And if you do decide to do a signing, fly me down because you're going to need help. I'll help hand out books. I'll wear a Bob Ingle t-shirt. Whatever you need, I'm there. But the book, like I said, I read it in one sitting. It's fantastic. Chris Christie, the inside story of his rise to power. I'm going to do the same thing I did with Soprano State. Instead of leaving it in pristine condition, I'm going to mark it up. I'm going to dog-ear it. I'm going to put tabs, and I'm going to continue to reference it down the road. Bob, again, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us about this book. I loved it. People need to go out and buy it. Can they get it at just about any major bookstore, Barnes & Noble?
Any place they sell books is going to have it. Okay. It makes a great Father's Day gift, by the way. Originally, that was the idea. They were going to promote as a Father's Day gift. But any bookstore, any independent or chain store, you can get it online from any of the people who sell books online. It's everywhere. In fact, I have a good friend who is a New York Times best-selling author. He writes fiction, and he and I go back, I don't know, about 30 years or so. And what he told me, he sent me a note last night, and he said, "Can you hear that phone? Somebody else wants me to do some."
You're a popular man.
He said that I was just going through the airport, Bob, and he said, I want to tell you that every airport I go through, they have the Chris Christie book. So if you get desperate, you can go to an airport.
Bob Ingle, you're the man. Thanks so much for talking to us. Good luck with your interview tonight, and keep us in the loop.
All righty, will do. Thanks.